Yes, I believe Colin did pick the music, Tony. And good evening. Welcome to Pontificating with Pete on Generational Change. It's good to see you guys. I think you can understand why we're only doing one show a week right now with everything that's going on with the campaign. There is a limited amount of time that is actually available on a given day. But I didn't want to neglect my people. I definitely wanted to come on here and catch up because things are going pretty well, all things considered. Win or lose, I think we're putting our best foot forward. That's probably the most important thing to know. You know, when Jen ran in 2020, we really didn't know what we were doing, at least for a while. I think towards the end, in the last couple of months, I think we had a reasonable idea of what we needed to do. But obviously, it wasn't enough. And what we know now is that the ground game really is everything. You have to be able to afford mailers. That is an expense, but it is a good expense if you spend it wisely, if you know how to do it. And then of course you got to do text blasts. And that's basically the trio, if you will, the trinity of the campaign. And right now we are, when it's all said and done, by the time we get to election day, I believe we're going to hit something in excess of 50,000 doors. That is almost quadruple what we did the first time. The district lines are better. Jen has more name ID. I think the funds have been better allocated. And we're much more focused. Got a great campaign manager that's putting us on the right path. And the word on the ground has just been very, if not overwhelmingly positive, I would say. You don't talk to everybody, but the consensus from who you talk to suggests that we might be onto something. So we're only 8 days away. Well, technically 9, but nevertheless, it's right around the corner, and there's no telling what's going to happen. But maybe something good will finally happen, because we've been taking it on the chin for far too long, and in so many ways, the person that Jen is running against is kind of the person that put us on this like Biff horrific time tangent, kind of like out of Back to the Future 2, where you were kind of hoping that you were going to end up on the right timeline and somehow we got stuck. And this is where we got stuck. And maybe we're going to finally get out of it. Maybe we're finally going to find a way. We're going to take a new path on the train. Not the Trump train, but, a train nonetheless. So just want to give you guys that update. For anybody who is here that has any interest in lending a hand for the home stretch, and this is when it really counts, on the phones. And since I know a lot of you guys are not around here, and this will make a huge difference, the email that I just dropped is the email that I use for the campaign. We need as many people on the phones as humanly possible over the last 9 days to chase ballots. Vote by mail turnout in this district has been very low. And that is good for Jen. Why? Because vote by mail is Debbie's bread and butter. And so if we have a real shot to win this, and I believe there's a chance, I believe Jen has a shot to win this, then we need everybody getting on the phones and making sure that anyone and everyone who can be dialing and convincing people that specifically have had ballots sent to their home, that they fill it out for Jen and go vote for her over the next 8 days. And then obviously you have election day. You can help, Travers. You can send an email and you can get on the phone. The same for Tony, same for Henry, same for Jimmy Zimzam. All you guys. It all matters. Believe me, it'd be really great. So yes, if you can do that good deed, that big favor, be tremendously appreciated by each and every one of you. Come a long way. Oh, I don't know about that. You may be asking for a lot. It's a good Abbey Road, profile picture. I'll give you that. So all of you guys are well aware that tonight was the Break the Internet interview between Elon Musk and Donald Trump. I have not watched it. I don't know much of anything of what has been discussed. Colin, tell me, I don't know if there's any specifics in terms of what they were talking about or how long these clips are, but obviously we want to at least get an idea because apparently Trump has returned to Twitter. X.
Yeah, so it's not too broad of a topics because if anyone listened to it, they rambled quite a bit. But the main crux of a lot of their stuff was immigration, is what several of the clips are about. The economy. I think Trump actually had to. You'll hear it. It sounds like Trump had to finally make Musk move on from the immigration and to talk about something else. And briefly talked about stuff like Ukraine and Israel. At least I wasn't there the whole time because it started late, so it was actually going as we're getting ready for these live streams. So if they end up going into more detail, I'm not sure, but it's Trump had some interesting thoughts on climate change as well.
Oh boy. All right. So we'll cue it up. We've got a few of them here. Let's see what he's got to say.
We're going to go back in October. We're all set up, and the people are fantastic in Butler. It's a great area. These are incredible people. Like the three that, in the case of Corey, killed, and the other two, the families I got to know them a little bit, and the families are great. But we're going back to Butler, and I think I'll probably start by saying, as I was saying, prior to being so horribly interrupted, but.
Yeah, so rudely interrupted by an assassination attempt.
But the chart.
Some people have no manners.
Elon, the chart was just a chart that in my last week, we had the best illegal immigration numbers, meaning stopping. It was at the lowest. You've seen the chart. It's become quite a famous chart.
Yeah.
But that was the lowest point ever recorded. It was a really, I was very proud of those numbers. And then you see what happened with these people, Kamala and Joe. You see what happened. They just let it go. I had remain in Mexico policies. I had all these different policies that was so good. Guys like Tom Homan and Brandon Judd from Border Patrol. These are all people that they've been on television. They says the best numbers we've ever had. We had so many different checks, catch and release in Mexico, not the United. We had catch and release in the United States. We had it in Mexico.
Here's the problem. I've been saying for the longest time that the reason why there is any type of immigration crisis in this country is because it's manufactured every time, all the time. And it's always manufactured against workers in the United States. Because as soon as the workers start feeling their sea legs and recognizing that a living wage is possible, that universal health care is possible, that life with dignity is possible, including paid family and medical leave, well, guess what happens? We have right to work laws in this country like we do here in the state of Florida. And then they just open up the floodgates and bring in more desperate people that will work for pennies on the dollar. If we had real labor laws with teeth, then we would really be able to stick it to them. But the bigger this issue gets, the more that this just becomes an insanely out of control problem. But I digress. It's easy to punch immigrants. It's harder to punch oligarchs. Trump is not going to do this interview and talk about the fact that Elon horrifically pays his Tesla workers, even though Sean Fain led the UAW to getting double the pay that Elon's workers get at Tesla, that they now do at Daimler Chrysler, GM, and Ford. So as a result of that, Trump had to go after Sean Fain. It was necessary to go after Sean Fain because Sean Fain treats his workers better. And of course, Elon gave him a shitload of money to basically go on stage and say that. That's what he did. It's pretty fucking obvious as far as from where I stand. And so the whole It's totally the immigrants' fault. It's their fault. They totally did it. No other reason. It's just so unbelievably stupid.
We had so many things. We had things where if many people come in there, they have contagious diseases. We had everything passed. If you have a contagious disease, I'm sorry, but we cannot allow you into the country. So we were setting literally records, and all I was doing is showing that, and I use it sometimes, and in this case, I'm glad I used it. I can tell you that, but they were fantastic numbers. But I'm going to sleep with that chart always. I'll be sleeping with that chart. That chart was very important.
He'll be sleeping with that chart. He'll be making sweet, sweet love to that chart. That saved his life. Just a slight turn of the head. That's all it took. Slight turn of the head. And unfortunately, this is where we are. And the issues with so many of these people, like these oligarchs that are talking, it's much, much easier to point the finger in the direction of those that have no money and no power versus pointing it at the finger in the direction of the very people that are causing this problem in the first place. Very funny, Travers. We will continue with this interview.
I have a lot of people that just shouldn't be. I think it's a much bigger number than you think. They're allowing, again, they're allowing people from their jails. And if you were running one of these countries where they're coming from, you would have had all of them. As an example, Venezuela, their crime is down 72%. They're taking their drug dealers. They're taking, frankly, their prisoners. They're emptying out their prisons. They're taking their criminals, their murderers, their rapists, and they're delivering them into.
But that's what Castro did.
Yeah, well, he did on a much smaller scale.
Yeah.
You know, it was a much smaller scale. But this is a massive scale because this is being done worldwide. But here's what's happening: crime all over the world is down. And wait till you see the numbers that we have. You know, this is migrant crime. This is crime that's going to be.
Yeah.
And I saw it today in New York where somebody was knifed with raped the girlfriend of a man that stood there watching in New York in one of the shelters and started pulling out the knives, and bad things happened.
There's always these anecdotal stories that always manage to come up about this one specific incident that has to be talked about. You know, there was this really terrible story that happened in New York, a city full of 8 million people, but this particular time, it was really bad. It really sucked. It was really terrible. You know, it really was. It really stunk. And that's why we have to crack down on all this crime. And, you know, I will say this. And this is very important that again, it's another point of emphasis of why everything that is being talked about here is just such nonsense. It really is. Again, both sides are completely guilty of this. I don't want to hear none of this crap about, oh, Trump lies. Yeah, they all fucking lie. He just does it as a carnival barker like P.T. Barnum. That's his style, and a lot of people dig it. So I get it. But when he talks about Venezuela and why Venezuela is suffering the way that it is, it's not suffering in the way that people think. There's two things here that are going on that no one wants to talk about. The first one is Venezuela is tied to the US dollar. So we can sanction them to death, which we've been doing, and that's why they have problems. And the other reason, which is the reason we're sanctioning them in the first place, is because 25% of the crude oil supply in the world, biggest supply by far, is under Venezuela's oil, under their soil. And so we believe that we are entitled to it. So if we have to do regime change, which we've tried doing before, again, it's the same thing when numbnuts Wasserman Schultz goes on national television and declares the person who I don't even remember the name of that ran against Maduro the winner. Now, again, I ain't here cheerleading for Nicolas Maduro. I'm not doing that. But we really have a problem allowing other countries to handle their own business. We can't let that happen because they have something we want. That's it. Lots of other shit goes on in other parts of the world no one cares about if it isn't anything that could be of benefit to us. But Venezuela is in the Western Hemisphere, and we believe that we are entitled to that oil that is under that soil. That's it. So anything else that anybody else talks about is all a bunch of hogwash. It's a waste of time to even fathom any other reason, because there isn't one. We'll continue.
Today, but this is happening every day. These are rough people. These are people that are in jail for murder and all sorts of things, and they're releasing them into our country, and they're telling them, if you come back, we're going to kill you. We're going to give you the death penalty or kill you. So they don't want to come back. But these are rough people.
Yeah.
These are criminals that make our criminals look like nice people, and it's horrible what they're doing. And she's in charge of it because, now she's trying to say she had nothing to do with it, and she's such a liar because she was called the border czar the first day, and it was on the headlines of every newspaper. She's the border czar, and she never even went there. She went to one location which had.
All right, so I'm going to say this, and they are going to debate. I think it's September 10th is the date. And so here's the bottom line. Trump has a couple of areas that he can nail Harris on, and it's going to hurt her. One is her record as the Attorney General of California, and the other is her record on immigration as the vice president. And he's going to be like a dog with a bone, and that's what he's going to do. They've done a really good job of not allowing Harris to have too much exposure at this point, but that's ultimately going to change. It just will, because it'll ultimately hurt her in the polls because people are getting frustrated with the fact that there isn't any teeth to anything that she's doing. It's basically riding the honeymoon wave right now, and it's still pretty strong. I mean, the rallies have been pretty strong and all that, but never, ever, ever underestimate Trump's ability to create a narrative that works for him politically, because that's what he does, and he's very good at it. And people that still underestimate him are making a huge mistake, even if it sounds like he's slurring his words a little bit. So that is, again, this is politics. It's not about who tells the truth. It's about who makes the best argument. And sometimes Trump ends up making the best argument, and that's why he's successful. But we're also stuck in a two-party duopoly that isn't going to save us. And more people need to come to that reality. And I think they are coming to it. It's every day more and more people look at the system and just say, okay, we have to make a change. So let's see what else the Donald has to say.
I mean, would it be accurate to say that you're supportive of legal immigration, but we also need to shut down illegal immigration, and especially unvetted illegal immigration, because that's not the same as saying that everyone who's an illegal immigrant is bad. In fact, I think most people who are illegal immigrants are actually good, but you can't tell a difference unless there's a solid vetting of who comes across the border. Does that accurately represent your position?
I say it very simply. They have to come in legally. They have to be checked.
Yeah.
Because look, Kamala was the border czar. Now she's denying it. Everything that I do, she's saying she was strong on the border. We're going to be strong. Well, she doesn't have to say it. She could close it up right now. They could do things right now. It's horrible. No tax on tips, and all of a sudden she's making a speech and there will be no tax on tips. I said that months ago. And by the way, they had just the opposite. They had not only tax on tips, but they hired 88,000 IRS agents.
All right, so here's what I'm going to say. As I mentioned before, this is going to stick. Ultimately, when it comes down to it, the immigration issue is real, and it's going to affect how people vote. There is no question that is one thing that will be a topic of discussion. In addition to that, the duality in terms of, you have Vice President Harris saying that, I'm strong on the border, but she's really not. And this is the thing about politics, is who makes the best argument. Perception or not, Trump comes off as even if he's lying through his teeth, he comes off like a tell it like it is guy. Whereas I think for a lot of people, they don't get that vibe from Kamala at all. And that is, again, the thing about politics that I think a lot of people still don't recognize, which is, again, it's not about who tells the truth. It's about who tells the best argument, who gives the best argument. And that's a big part of it. So it's a big issue, and it's going to have quite a profound effect on the election. So we'll see how that one ultimately plays out. And we continue.
You know, I always say that we have enemies on the outside and we have enemies on the inside. We have some really bad people in our government and people that are, and controlling of the people. I mean, I'd mention names, but I really don't want to give them the credit. But we have some really bad, and I say they're more dangerous than Russia and China. If you have a smart president, a president that gets it, we are not in danger from those countries because they need us and they need our help. I mean, we forced Obama, if you think about it, Obama and Biden, and Bush to a certain extent, in all fairness, forced Russia and China together. And if you're a history student, the first thing you learn is you cannot let Russia and China align. But then they also got, if you take a look, Iran, and they have North Korea. That's, you know, they call it the axis of evil. In the old days, you had the axis of evil. Here we have a modern day axis of evil. These are powerful countries, very heavy nuclear, which is the biggest threat.
Yeah.
You know, the biggest threat is not global warming, where the ocean's going to rise 1/8 of an inch over the next 400 years. And you'll have more.
1/8 of an inch over the next 400 years. And Dr. Trump is letting you know that he is the totally the smartest scientist, the best scientist. I totally know everything. But here's the thing that Donald Trump is better at than the Democrats are. I'm not saying the GOP is better, but he is. Donald Trump does not want war. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that Kamala Harris, for example, wants war, but there is a big difference between the level of control and power that Trump exudes over the grand old party versus the level of power and control that Kamala Harris exudes over the Democratic Party. And as we all know, that is night and day. Having a libertarian anti-war streak, despite the fact that Trump was a wrecking machine as president when it came to drone strikes. But again, as I've said, it's not about who tells the truth. It's about who presents the best argument. And when Trump talks about this Russophobic attitude towards Russia, which pushes them into the arms of China, which is our economic competitor, worldwide, then this is real. And this is also what puts us in a very vulnerable position regarding our currency and our standing in the world. Trump seems to understand that seemingly better than the Democratic establishment does. But truth be told, this is just a billionaire's game at this point. They don't care how many people have to be sacrificed over the course of it. I think it was pathetic that Trump couldn't be more forceful when addressing George W. Bush, who is the worst president of our lifetime. But it's really incredible in so many ways. And when Trump says these things, you don't have to look too far as to why people agree with him. Because you're never going to get this kind of candid talk from somebody like Kamala Harris, much less Joe Biden, who is still the president. And he's not going to do anything. So the vice president is kind of stuck in a no-win situation. They don't know it yet, but that's kind of what's going to happen. Trump's approach is much more stealth than bombastic, and maybe that's just him tempering it a little bit because of what happened to him a month ago. But make no mistake, this is a big deal, and these are winning issues that Trump is trying to push forward. It just is. I don't have to agree with it. But I also know, I can read the tea leaves, and I hope everybody else can as well.
You'll have more oceanfront property, right? The biggest threat is not that. The biggest threat is nuclear warming. because we have 5 countries
Well,
now that
yeah.
have significant nuclear power, and we have to not allow anything to happen with stupid people like Biden.
All right, look, I don't. He's going to say what he's going to say to get the big oil money. I understand that, but I got to tell you, that answer regarding nuclear change or however he, because the Trumpisms and the words that he puts out there, that was actually well said. If you were to poll people who they feel more comfortable with when it comes to foreign policy, between what the Democrats are doing today and what the Trump Republicans are doing, nuclear warming, yeah. Nuclear holocaust is probably the better word, DeFreak. It's a dangerous thought, depending on how you look at it, about how bad it could actually get. I will tell you that Trump's instinct is not to go to war, and that's why they don't want him in there ever again. And who knows what lengths they'll pull in order to do it, but that is a winning issue.
The election's coming up, and the people want to hear about the economy and the fact that
Absolutely,
they can't
sure.
buy groceries because they don't have enough money to buy groceries. The inflation has killed them. Food prices are up 50, 60, even 100% in some cases. And this stupid administration allowed this to happen, and it's a shame. And that's the thing that people most care about, in my opinion. They care about the border a lot. And we discussed the border at great length. It's nice to have a
Yeah, yeah.
forum like this where I can discuss something at length. And by the way, you think Biden could do this interview? Do you think that Kamala could do this interview? They would take a pass on
No,
you.
they cannot.
So they don't need Elon. They don't need Elon screaming out questions. It's pretty sad when you think that somebody that does this for a living can't answer a question or is afraid to do an interview. And in her case, with a very friendly.
All right, he's just rambling now, so we don't need to listen to that clip. That doesn't have any value. Trump is good when he's talking about an issue that the general consensus of people actually agree on. When he starts talking about himself and his ego, he is the biggest jackass in politics. Just about. All right, maybe not the biggest, but he's certainly one of the biggest. And that's when people just can't stand him because his ego is as big as the Empire State Building.
Have to bring energy prices down. Energy started it. The price of gasoline. Now your cars don't require too much gasoline, so you have a good, and you do make a great product. I have to say, I have to be honest with you. That doesn't mean everybody should have an electric car, but these are minor details. But your product is incredible. But
thank you for that $45 million donation, by the way.
But the gasoline, Elon, is the cost of energy. Not only gasoline, it's the cost of heating your house and cooling your house. That has to come down. It's gone up 100%, 150, and 200%, and that has to come down. When that comes down, and we're going to drill, baby, drill. They stopped drilling, and then they went back to drilling because they went back to the Trump policy. But if they won the day after they get into office, this country will go out of business because they're going to go to an energy policy that's not sustainable.
You see, this is the thing about Trump that I've always maintained is the worst thing about him. His attitude, his laissez-faire attitude to the effects of the environment. And again, I have always maintained that this is the thing about climate change, whether you believe it or not. There are indisputable facts about what we have done to this planet. And do you know what they are? The indisputable facts about this planet, just ask our friend of the show and the real on-the-ground journalist in independent media, Jordan Chariton of Status Quo News. We contaminate clean drinking water supplies all over this country for the sake of hydraulic fracturing. Total contamination of clean drinking water. That's climate change. You're changing the water climate. You're making it undrinkable. You're also creating man-made earthquakes and leaks. I don't know about you, but I would say that that's a pretty big problem. So I don't know, there are those that just seem to neglect the fact that whether you believe that the climate is warming, I know what can't be disputed, and that is fracking probably above everything else, and coal is obviously terrible too. Coal and fracking are what is going to be the death of us in terms of our ability to be healthy. Now, I know some people disagree with me, but I think that the quickest way, without question, to get off of fossil fuels, especially coal and natural gas, is to transition to nuclear power. Obviously, nuclear power has advanced significantly over the years, and I do believe that that is something that will have a profoundly positive effect on us if we are able to transition. Yes, Jamie, it should be limited, but frankly, it shouldn't even exist. Yes, Sam, so-called scientists were calling for an ice age in the 70s. Everything is possible, but it should only deal in fact. What I'm talking about is fact. It is indisputable that the oceans have warmed, which is why tropical storms all of a sudden immediately turn into hurricanes because of the wind speed, because that's what happens in warm water. That's indisputable. The same is true when it comes to clean drinking water all over this country that is within earshot of a fracking station. Can't dispute it. Now, granted, coal is only in certain places. We unfortunately are in the business of fixing problems, not preventing problems. That's always been our MO, and eventually it will put us at a point of no return if we're not there already. Our congressional representative, who Jen is hopefully going to take out in just over a week's time, supports fracking, period. So it isn't just one side. And that would be great. Therein lies the biggest problem in the capitalist system. You can have great ideas and you could potentially execute them and be very successful in the free market. But when capitalism unfettered takes control, eventually you get fucked. Because there's always going to be one person who can pull the reins of power that says, let's just cut a couple of corners here and there and make the margins a little better. Because that's what we need. It's all about this quarter's profit margin. That shit's got to go away for good. Otherwise, we're doomed. And in their eyes, it's okay if we're doomed because they don't see it as anything other than, we've got to go. Okay, if that's how you feel. But I will tell you, if there is one thing that has defined this election between Jen and Wasserman Schultz. Thank you, yes, but no. Really appreciate you checking in. And hopefully that is the case. But this is the issue that so many of us are dealing with here in the state of Florida. It's housing. We have a housing crisis on an exorbitant level. Absolutely insanity how bad this has gotten here in this congressional district. Wasserman Schultz has taken over 100,000 from the real estate industry this election cycle and then the previous two each. Over the course of her career, she's taking about $1.3 million or $1.4 million from the real estate industry, led by Blackstone. So that's why we have no legislation of any kind at the federal level helping us with what we're dealing with right here. It's a disaster. And if that's not enough and proof positive that Wasserman Schultz has to go now, she sits on the Appropriations Committee. She has the ability to help people in this community and does jack shit. And you know why? Because she's bought and paid for by corporate special interests. And that's it. It's that simple. When you work on behalf of people that it is their mission to kick as many people out of their homes as possible, so that way they can scoop it up and turn us all into forever renters. RFK, it is a sin that he is the only person running for president who has basically made it his main political message regarding private equity and what that has done to this country and to the world. If we stay on the trajectory we're on right now, 60% of single-family homes in this country by the end of the decade are going to be owned by the private equity giants led by Blackstone, State Street, and Vanguard. And that's where we're headed. Here's a clip that I think will put this into better perspective.
Home prices have gone up, rents have gone up, evictions have increased, and a whole group of would-be home buyers has been priced out of homeownership, becoming permanent renters.
People want to own the American dream. They don't want to rent the American dream.
They've been replaced by an industry that treats our communities and neighborhoods like a day trader treats stocks, just something to buy and sell to maximize return.
You know, this is really no different, if you think about it, than healthcare. It's the same thing. Oh, you don't have a roof over your head? Too fucking bad. Oh, you don't have, the medicine you need in order to stay alive because you can't afford it anymore? Too bad. It's kind of like that scene out of Goodfellas. Oh, you had a fire? Fuck you, pay me. It's just like that. That's a great question, Phil. Probably nobody. It's always the buck that gets passed off to somebody else until it's your problem. And then we'll see how you feel about it. Yeah, work harder. Just work harder.
It's been catastrophic.
Really just a few firms have been able to target and corner the market here. Their business model is built on exploitation and on having a very uneven playing field tilted in their favor.
So who exactly is behind this? We went to the cities at the center of this crisis to understand how single-family homes became big business.
Yo nunca he hablado con los dueños, solamente con las personas que trabajan para el dueño. Mi esposo tuvo que cambiar esa pared para que no nos afectara, porque mis hijos prácticamente ellos cada mes estaban enfermando.
This is a very common practice by the subsidiaries that are owned by private equity, including Invitation Homes. And I can speak to this on personal experience. I lived in an Invitation Home for a year. Even though you're a renter, you have a problem with the home. Oh, it's your responsibility, pal. Don't expect them to come and help you with shit. It's all on you. You can't fix it. Too bad. Figure it out. And I had quite a few issues staying in that house. Really, really sucked. Corporate housing. Think about it. Corporate landlords. It's one thing if you have workforce housing, which is fine because there are different professions where people have to travel. It's kind of like a modified version of Airbnb. That's understandable because those are necessity jobs that have to be filled in different places at different times. But this idea that mega corporations can go in and buy up entire communities and turn everyone into renters. And the reason they're able to get away with it is because they buy off our politicians who look the other way. And Wasserman Schultz has been doing this for decades. And that's how it gets so bad. Imagine in this political day and age, in the Democratic Party, no less, taking money hand over fist from the real estate industry led by Blackstone. You got to have a pair of cojones. Serious cojones.
Desvelos de mis hijos, no íbamos a trabajar por hacer todo eso y ellos no nos han compensado con ni $1, nunca, al contrario, nos suben las rentas.
It's been years since she's been asking for repairs.
Jessica Moreno is a housing organizer who's helping Sandra.
They got their rent raised every year. They do what they can to make sure the rent is paid every single month. And then on top of that, they still have to fix the home.
When she looked into Sandra's landlord, she found it's a Texas-based private equity firm that's among the largest owners of single-family homes in the country.
She rents from a corporate landlord called Amherst. Just in Charlotte, Amherst owns 1,583 homes. When you think of landlords, you think of someone that has maybe 2 houses, right? That's not what we're dealing with. We're dealing with, backed by Wall Street, corporations that own thousands of homes.
That's a crisis. And guess what? I know it is because I'm in this industry. I see the greed every fucking day. Now, I choose not to work with certain people for obvious reasons because they're mostly ethical. But let me tell you, there's a lot of people that turn the other cheek. They just don't care. It's all about money. I'll do business with the worst of them. And let me also tell you something. There's a lot of Zionists that are in corporate real estate. A lot of them. Some people can live with it, and there are others who can't. Most can, few can't. I'm one who can't. Just can't do it. Can't live with myself. Wouldn't be able to. Other people, okay, good for you. Got to make a choice. Either you have morals or you don't.
Sandra says she spent $25,000 repairing the house, and Amherst hasn't paid her back for any of it.
$25,000 as a renter. Can't get the money back. And she never will. Because this is where the fleet of lawyers come in for the multi-billion-dollar companies. If there is an issue locally, because this is also a little life lesson, guys, I'm going to teach you about politics. And thank you, DeFreak. Very much appreciated. The number one thing to understand about politics in terms of how you can get voters to support you. And thank you, Chip. Much appreciated. It's very simple when you get right down to it. It's simply this. Can you address an issue that directly touches your constituents? And can you directly tie the individual who is making it worse for them? And in the case of Wasserman Schultz and in the case of corporate real estate and the exorbitant cost of living that exists down here, there is no question whatsoever. Now, Wasserman Schultz works against people, especially when it comes to housing here in South Florida. Jen can't save the world, but she can certainly move the needle in the right direction if she gets in. At least it'll be a topic of discussion and an issue that we can address with a very significant platform. And we intend to use it. But my God, to be this despicable towards your people, to be this cold and cruel, to take the money from these scumbags that are literally screwing us. This is why a lot of people give up on the political system, and rightfully so. I don't blame them. You look around and you think to yourself, what good does this do? What does this do for me? Why should I believe that anyone is ever going to help me? And a lot of people do give up. And I think that that is has a huge impact on voter turnout, enthusiasm. Everybody wants to act all excited about Kamala right now. And I don't blame people for feeling excited. They just want to see things change in whatever positive way they can. But I, for one, think it's just too much smoke and mirrors. And people are not going to continue to buy into this crap. Eventually, something's going to give. Will it give sooner rather than later? I don't know. I hope it does. But if you would like to lend a hand for the home stretch, and I'm sure you all would, make sure you send me an email at peter@gen2024.org. We need people on the phones. We must chase ballots. We got to get people out to the polls. This is how we're going to do it. And it ain't going to take a few people. It's going to take dozens and dozens of people helping us chase those ballots. Thousands upon thousands of calls need to be made. We cannot take any chances. Got to throw it all at the wall. All of it. But I will tell you this. The support for Jet on the Ground has been overwhelmingly positive. And frankly, most people are tired and are ready to move on from Debbie. I think Debbie fatigue is a real thing. That's a real thing. You want to sit in Congress for 20 years? Very few people actually do challenge these longstanding incumbents with real teeth. They don't do that. But make sure you send an email right there to me, letting me know that you would like to get on the phones, and so we can bring this home for Jen. I do not believe we're going to do a show on Thursday, but we'll probably do something Monday night before the election. Donald, good to see you. We're actually about to wrap. I'm glad you do, Tone. I'm glad you do. I think Tim Walz is a good dude. Overall, don't know enough. But obviously Jesse Ventura, who is a friend of the show and somebody who has been an ardent supporter of legalizing cannabis, as is Jen. Governor Walz did legalize it. So I totally get it. And of course, with Sean Fain is who I would want to see running for president. But the Democratic Party is not the party of labor anymore. It's the party of Wall Street and Silicon Valley. But labor is definitely trying to make its comeback. And we'll see what happens. Great to see you, Donald. And Letterhack, if you haven't seen the clip tonight, was there for a little while. You guys go check that out. For everyone that has come in, we will always be grateful for each and every one of you that helps us out. Phil Blair, Tony D, Travers, Henry Kajawa, Donald James, Jamie Ford, Chris Garrett, Sam Stan, Jimmy Zimzam, Kip in Charge, Ron Martin, been a while, hadn't seen you. Happy to have you back. DeFreak. Who else we got? Rogant. We've got Yes But No. Thank you for checking in. We've got, who else came on tonight? Kat Negrita, thank you for checking in. Let's see. Shalom Salam. Always good with the anecdotes. Those are certainly appreciated. Chip, of course. Thank you for checking in. It's always good to see you. Dab Bog, I believe you're new, and it is nice to have you here. Let's see. Always a lively chat, even with a limited amount of customers. But you always have to appreciate those that make the time, because that's how the channel can always grow. Asmuth Setting, thanks for checking in early. Anybody else? That may be all she wrote. If I forgot you, let me know, but I think I got you all. So, as I said, thank you, Anthony. Much appreciated. And one of the first things Jen will do as Congresswoman will sign on to the anti-insider trading bill. Oh, from your lips to God's ears, if God exists. That's all I can say. And thank you as always, Chris. And thank you all. It's great to have you all here. Hopefully we'll have a lot more to talk about in a very positive manner over the next 8+ days. so shall it be. See you soon.